Leba,
Here.
Jasmine,
Here.
Gabriel, 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 is your mic working? No, I didn't hear you, hon. I can see you. Kian,
Here.
Tasia, Amy,
Here.
Maya Kabir,
Here.
Harsimran,
Here.
Gian,
Here.
Sidharsan,
Here.
Ozazi,
Here. Here.
yeah, oh, there you are. Get in the picture. I can't see you. Maya Rambali,
Here.
Maya, get on camera. Samir,
Here.
I don't see you, Samir. There you are. Keep your camera on. Sarah,
Here.
where's Sarah? I don't see
I'm
you.
here, man. Can you hear me?
I can hear you, but I want to see you. Megdeep,
You can see the side of my
I'm here.
face.
where's Megdeep?
Here.
I don't see you.
My camera's on.
Adrian,
Here.
where are you, Adrian? Is your camera on?
I don't have a camera.
Didn't I already have this conversation with you to go get a Chromebook?
Miss, do I really need to go through the trouble of getting a Chromebook for my VP? Because I'm doing like fine without a camera in my other class. So I don't really know why I need one for this one.
This isn't coming from me. Okay? This is coming, we get these notices all the time. It's coming from the Minister of Education. It's coming from the school board that your cameras have to be on during class at all times.
But
It's called synchronous learning. I'm just following what they're telling me to do.
this is
And-
like this is the only class I know of that forces their students to wear cameras.
Well, you only have 2 classes, hon.
Well, I know I have friends, I have a brother.
Well, that's because I'm a rule follower. I follow the rules. If I'm told to do something, I do it. Aiden,
Here.
Koa, Koa, Japni, Japni,
Here.
where are you? I don't see you.
Miss, I'm doing something right now. I'll get on the camera in 1 minute.
Alan,
Here.
where? There you are. Okay, so let's see. Does it add up? Yes, it adds up.
Miss.
Wait, is Sarah here?
Miss.
Yeah, who's this?
Amaya. Tasia said she's having a hard time joining the class. She's trying to join right now.
Okay, thank you. Is Sarah here?
Yes, Miss, I'm here.
Oh, for some reason I marked you absent.
Miss, we had a whole conversation.
It's early onset dementia. I'm getting old. Okay, so first we're going to start with a presentation. Then we're going to take up chapter 4. Then we're going to do another presentation. So let's start with Jasmine and Gabriel. All right, let me grab a rubric. All right, Jasmine and Gabriel, do you know how to present?
Yeah, is it presenting? Like, can you see it?
Just a sec. Yeah, we can see.
Okay. Joseph Stalin. Joseph Stalin was the General Secretary of the Communist Party Soviet Union from 1922 to 1953 and Premier of the Soviet Union from 1941 to 1953. Joseph Stalin was one of the most ruthless dictators of modern times, transforming the Soviet Union into a major world power. He was a cold-blooded murderer, killing more than 20 million people through forced labor camps, collectivization, famine, and executions.
What's happening? Why isn't someone speaking?
I think Gabriel's supposed to say his thing right now.
Miss, do you hear me?
We can hear you now.
Okay. Joseph Stalin, Iosif Vissarionovich Dzugashvili was born on December 18, 1878 in Gori, Georgia, in the Russian Empire. He grew up in poverty as his mother, Keke Giladze, was a washerwoman and his father, Vissarion Dzugashvili, was a cobbler. His drunken father would savagely beat him and have
We lost you, Gabriel.
Hello?
Now we can hear you. Are you having trouble with your mic?
I'm not sure.
Okay, well, we can hear you now. Keep going.
His drunken father would savagely beat him, and having a harsh childhood made him very quickly attracted to radical movements. At the age of 7, Stalin caught smallpox, which was an infectious disease caused by variola virus, leaving him with a pockmarked face. At the age of 12, he got injured in a horse-drawn carriage accident which left him with a slightly deformed arm. Joseph Stalin's mother wanted him to become a priest, and in 1888 enrolled him in the church school in Gori. In 1895, he went to Tiflis Theological Seminary, where he secretly read books by Karl Marx instead of studying scripture. He joined in a localist socialist group who introduced him to the books. In 1899, Stalin got expelled from the seminary for revolutionary activity. As Stalin chose not to return home, he stayed in Tiflis and worked as a clerk at the Tiflis Observatory.
Stalin's rise to power. In 1901, Stalin joined the Social Democratic Labor Party and organized protests and strikes for the revolutionary movement against Tsarism. In 1902, he got arrested for coordinating a strike, and he was sent to prison in Siberia, but he soon escaped. Between 1902 and 1913, Stalin was arrested 7 times for revolutionary activity. In 1903, the Social Democratic Labor Party split into 2 groups, Menshevik and Bolshevik, and Stalin joined the Bolshevik Party led by Vladimir Lenin because he believed in his policies. Stalin impressed Lenin with his strikes and ruthless techniques to raise money for the party. In 1907, Joseph Joseph Stalin stole 250,000 rubles in a bank robbery in Tiflis, which is 3.4 million in US dollars. He had now adopted the name Stalin, which comes from Russian Stal, meaning steel or man of steel. In 1912, Lenin made Stalin a member of the Bolshevik Party's Central Committee, and soon Stalin ran the newly founded Bolshevik newspaper called the Pravda. Failing to escape, he underwent exile from July 1913 to March 1917. However, the beginning of the Russian Revolution freed all political prisoners. In March of 1917, the Tsar had abdicated the throne, and the provisional government took over. But Lenin denounced it, arguing that people should rise and take control. Stalin helped Lenin prepare the final plan for the revolution, but he was less prominent than Leon Trotsky for the success of the October Revolution. In October 1917, the Russian Revolution was complete and the Bolsheviks seized power in Russia. During the Russian Civil War of 1918 to 1920, Stalin was a political military leader and commissar for nationalities and state control. The Russian Civil War of 1918 to 1920 occurred because of monarchists, capitalists, and supporters of democratic socialism opposing the Bolsheviks. In 1922, Lenin took power and he appointed Stalin to become Secretary General of the Central Committee of the Communist Party, which gave Stalin all control over all party member appointments, building the base of his dictatorship. He became a member of many other committees to help maneuver his rival, Leon Trotsky.
Are you waiting for Gabriel, Jasmine?
Oh yeah.
Gabriel?
Hello?
Yeah? Gabriel?
Do you hear me?
Now we do.
In 1924, after Vladimir Lenin's death, Stalin promoted his cult of personality. Everyone had to praise him, and his portrait was everywhere from schools to factories. In 1925, Stalin renamed the city Tsaritsyn to Stalingrad. Stalin's main rival, Trotsky, was ruled out to triumvirate of Joseph Stalin, Grigory Zinoviev, and Lev Kamenev. Shortly, Stalin joined with the leaders Nikolai Bukharin and Alexei Rykov in an alliance directed against his former co-triumvirs. Believing that the Soviet Union could establish a successful political system without the support expected from the worldwide revolution, Stalin advocated the socialism in one country policy. When Trotsky criticized Stalin's plans, Stalin exiled him from the Soviet Union in 1929 and had him assassinated in Mexico in 1940.
The Holodomor. The Holodomor was the worst man-made famine in human history, which took place in Soviet Ukraine between 1932 and 1933, killing millions of Ukrainians. In the late 1920s, Stalin launched a series of 5-year plans to turn the Soviet Union into a modern, industrialized country. To increase food production, Stalin introduced collectivization, which was seizing the land of peasants and reorganizing it into collective farms. Many of the peasants resisted collectivization and were not willing to give up their land and work for the state. The peasants were either shot, exiled, or sent to the gulags, which were forced labor camps. In the gulags, many were required to work up to 14 hours in extreme weather. Many died of starvation, exhaustion, disease, and execution. Stalin placed farms, villages, and towns in Ukraine on blacklists, preventing them from receiving food and prohibiting them from searching for food. Communist apparatchiks ransacked homes of the peasants and took everything edible.
Gabriel. Gabriel?
Do you hear me?
Yes.
Miss, if you want, I could say his part.
Yes, please.
Okay, the Great Purge. In 1934, to consolidate his position as supreme dictator, Stalin purged Communist Party members, some who had brought him to power, and Red Army officers because he believed they might oppose him. He also purged local officials suspected of counter-revolutionary activities. 93 of the 139 Central Committee members were killed, and 81 of the 103 generals and admirals in the Red Army were executed. In the late 1930s, there was a series of show trials held in the Soviet Union, and only few were publicized. The evidence presented in the court was obtained from preliminary examinations of the defendants and their confessions, which were made under pressure of torture. These trials eliminated the political rivals of Stalin and sent millions of alleged to the gulags. Stalin's role in World War II. In 1939, on the eve of the Second World War, Stalin signed the German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact with Adolf Hitler and his Nazi Party. The German-Soviet Non-Aggression Pact permitted the Soviet Union to take over eastern Poland, Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, and parts of Romania. In June 1941, a month after Stalin had made himself premier of the Soviet Union, Germany broke the pact and invaded the Soviet Union. Stalin was not prepared for the Nazi blitzkrieg, and as he purged many talented officers during the 1930s. Germany had occupied all of Ukraine and Belarus and were heading towards the Soviet capital of Moscow, but Stalin refused to leave. Stalin's son Jacob was taken prisoner by the Germans. As he refused their offer to exchange his son, Jacob died in a Nazi prison camp. Stalin directed Napoleon's scorched earth policy from 1812, where Soviet troops destroyed everything that could benefit the German troops, such as crops, bridges, and factories. In 1942, the tide turned with the Battle of Stalingrad. Stalin instructed his troops not to retreat, and he launched a counterattack. In the Battle of Stalingrad, approximately 330,000 German troops were killed or captured, and the victory of Stalingrad allowed the Soviet troops to slowly push the Nazis out of their territories and liberate countries in Eastern Europe.
Do you hear me, miss?
I do now.
Stalin participated in high-level conferences in 1943 at Tehran, Iran, and in 1945 at Yalta, Ukraine, where he issued inflexible terms to his allies, the United States and Britain. In Tehran, Iran, Stalin demanded that the Allies opened a second front against Germany, and in 1944, the Allies agreed to his call. In Yalta, Ukraine, Stalin agreed on defeating Japan. However, at the U.S., President Franklin D. Roosevelt died, and British Prime Minister Winston Churchill was replaced. Both Britain and the U.S. wanted to avoid Soviet involvement in a post-war Japan. The United States and Britain became his rivals. and he now wanted to make the Soviet Union dominant in Europe and force communism on the world. Between the years 1945 and 1948, he forced communism government in Eastern Europe through purges, and he tried to gain control over France and Italy. In 1948, to gain full control of Berlin, Stalin blocked entry to the city, stopping all rail, road, and water communications with Eastern Europe. The Allies responded with an 11-month-long airlift of supplies to people trapped in the city, which forced Stalin to back down.
Stalin's death. At the beginning of 1953, Stalin arrested Kremlin doctors, accusing them of medically murdering several communist officials and leaking information to other countries. 9 doctors who had treated major Soviet leaders were charged for murdering the Central Committee secretary and the head of the main political administration of Soviet army. Stalin was now preparing to use the doctor's plot to launch a massive purge, but he suddenly died from a stroke on March 5, 1953 in Moscow, Russia. In 1956, Stalin's successor Nikita Khrushchev denounced him and began de-Stalinization, destroying the Stalin image. Stalin's name was taken off from buildings, streets, factories, and the city of Stalingrad, which was renamed Volgograd. Miss, can you see the video?
No?
We can't see it?
No, I can see the link.
Okay, let me just. Okay. Can you see it now?
Yes?
Okay.
That night, I was alone, and then there was a very loud knock at the door. I opened the door.
Can you stop the minute? Can you stop the video, Jasmine?
Oh yeah, I stopped it.
Okay, so it's lagging. Is that a YouTube video?
No, it's actually on like a news thing.
Sorry?
It's on like a news report thing.
And where did you get that? From Google? From what'd you get it
Oh,
from?
I got it from Google. So BBC
It's
News.
from a website.
From Google.
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm gonna take up chapter 4. In the meantime, because that's on your Google, that's on your, was this a PowerPoint?
Oh yeah, this is a
Yes.
So are you playing it from the PowerPoint?
No, I'm playing
No,
it from
we're playing it from the website.
You're playing it from Google. And it's lagging?
Oh, I guess it is. I don't know.
Did you have a Google tab open?
Oh yeah, it was open.
And then you were playing it right from Google?
Yes.
Oh. Okay, guys. Let's try turning our cameras off and playing the video. See if that works. Except for you, Jasmine. Okay, play it now.
Alright, okay.
And then there was a very loud knock at the door. I opened the door, and there was a crowd, a big crowd of
Yeah, that's not
men.
working. Okay, stop it.
It's okay, I could like explain it if you want me to.
Okay, guys, turn your cameras back on.
Okay, I'll explain the piece, if that's fine.
Okay.
Okay, so Natasha's father, Professor Yakov Rapoport, was among the few survivors of Stalin's doctor's plot. Natasha explains how her father was accused of spying for England. He was taken by Stalin's men and he was kept in manacles for several nights. He refused to sign false accusations because if he did, then there would have been a death sentence. She also explains how major targets were Jewish doctors, and when you would turn on the radio, all you would hear is how this Jewish killer doctors. The doctor's plot shows how Joseph Stalin was a greedy, evil, and cruel man. He didn't care about his citizens, instead he got rid of them by purging them and executing them. If he didn't put forward false accusations against all these doctors, then he would have been treated for his joke, or like before his joke.
Okay, great. Thank you. That was very informative, guys. Lots of information. Great job. Okay, now let's take up chapter 4 of Animal Farm. So,
Miss,
yeah, are you not done? Are you not done?
we have one last slide.
Oh, sorry. Okay, go ahead.
Joseph Stalin killed an estimate of 20 million people during his brutal rule, making him one of the greatest mass murderers in history. Joseph Stalin brought the Soviet Union from a minor regional power in Europe to a global superpower. Joseph Stalin played an important role in defeating Hitler after Hitler betrayed Stalin by invading Russia. Though many feared him, some Russian citizens had pride for raising their country to a great level. And that's our presentation, Miss.
Great. Well covered, guys. Great job. Okay, I have to enter attendance in Trillium. It does not add up. Okay, just give me a second to enter attendance in Trillium, okay? Okay, guys, I'm back. All right, let's take up chapter 4. Make sure when we're taking up these study questions that you are taking notes and making sure that you have accurate answers. All right, who was Mr. Pilkington and Mr. Frederick? So tell me, who was Mr. Pilkington? Chelsea?
Mr. Pilkington is an easygoing gentleman farmer who spent most of his time fishing or hunting depending on the season. His farm, Foxwood, was large, neglected, and old-fashioned, and it was in a disgraceful condition.
Oh, very good. Excellent. And who was Mr. Frederick? Leba?
Mr. Frederick was an owner of the farm called Pinchfield. It was smaller and better kept. He was a tough man, and he had a lot of lawsuits against him.
Very good. He had a lot of lawsuits against him. He had a name for driving hard bargains. Okay. And what about the relationship between these two? Kian?
These two disliked each other so much that it was difficult for them to come to any agreement, even in defense of their own interests.
Excellent. Okay, number 2. What attitude did Pilkington and Frederick take to the events of Animal Farm? Amy?
They were both nervous about the whole Rebellion Act because they didn't know if their animals on the farm were going to do the same thing. So they tried to just keep all the information about it away from their animals so they wouldn't get any ideas.
Very good. They were nervous that the rebellion was going to spread to their farms and their animals would do the same. Very good. All right. What effect did the revolt have on the other farms of that area? Maya Career?
All the other animals started to sing Beasts of England everywhere.
Okay, what else?
That's all I got.
That's all you got.
Yeah.
Harsimaran, what'd you get?
The bulls turned savage, the sheep broke down hedges and devoured the clover, cows kicked the pail over, hunters refused their fences and shot their riders onto the other side.
Very good. So basically, the animals are going crazy, right? They're doing all these bad things. They're rebellion. There's a wave of rebelliousness that's running through the countryside, and all of the animals are rebelling and doing things that are out of character, and they are all singing Beasts of England. So it is spreading. 4, describe in your own words the October attempt to recapture the farm by Mr. Drones. Provide names and details. Explain fully the strategy raised by the animals. Okay, so I'm going to answer this question. Make sure you're taking notes and that you have it. All right. So, as the human beings approached the farm buildings, Snowball launched his first attack. All the pigeons, about 35, flew to and fro over the men's heads and dropped their dung, that means their poo, on them from midair. So that's the first attack. And while the men were dealing with this, the geese, who had been hiding behind the hedge, rushed out and pecked vigorously at the calves of their legs. This, however, was only a light skirmishing maneuver intended to create a little disorder. When the men easily drove the geese off with their sticks, Snowball launched his second line of attack. Muriel, Benjamin, and all the sheep, with Snowball at the head of them, rushed forward and prodded and butted the men from every side, while Benjamin turned round and lashed at them with his small hooves. Once again, the men were too strong for them. Suddenly, at a squeal from Snowball, which was the signal for retreat, all the animals turned and fled through the gateway into the yard. So they were pretending that the battle was over, that they were surrendering, that they were running away. The men shouted in triumph, thinking they had won. As soon as they were well inside the yard, the 3 horses, 3 cows, and the rest of the pigs who had been lying in ambush in the cowshed suddenly emerged in their rear, cutting them off. Snowball gave the signal for the charge. He himself dashed right for Jones. Jones fired his gun. The pellets scored Snowball's back, and the sheep dropped dead. Without halting for an instant, Snowball flung all his weight at Jones's legs. Jones was thrown into a pile of poo, and his gun flew out of his hands. Boxer, rearing up on his hind legs, began striking at the men. He took out a stable lad from Foxwood, and at the sight of this, several men dropped their sticks and ran. The animals began chasing them round and round the yard. They were gored, kicked, bitten, trampled on, etc. Within 5 minutes of their invasion, they were in retreat by the same way as they had come, with a flock of geese hissing after them and pecking at their calves all the way. Okay. Does anyone can anyone guess what this represented in the Russian Revolution? Jasmine and Gabriel mentioned it today. Jasmine? Not Hitler. No, not Hitler. Any guesses? Okay, it represents the Civil War. Okay, the Civil War, which took place after Joseph Stalin came and took reign. Okay, so represents the Civil War. And number 5, how did the animals celebrate their victory? What awards did they hand out, and what did they name the battle? So how did they celebrate their victory? Gian?
they were singing the song Beasts of England, and then they gave Snowball and Boxer the Animal Hero First Class awards, and the Dead Sheep got the Animal Hero Second Class award. They named the battle of the Cowshed.
Yes, since that was where the ambush had sprung. Okay, and they also the flag was run up as well. Okay, and the sheep was given a solemn funeral. And it's important to remember the two animals that got Animal Hero First Class. Okay, that's important to remember. It was Snowball, okay, who took a bullet, and Boxer, okay, because that's going to get corrupted a little bit later. Okay, let's have our next presentation. Leba and Maya career. Leba, Maya, you guys ready?
I'm trying to connect the screen.
You just press present, a Chrome tab, and then it'll show the tabs that you have, and then you press the tab you want, okay? And then you press share.
Can you see it?
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay.
Joseph Stalin, Man of Steel. Who was Joseph Stalin? Head of both the Communist Party and Soviet government from 1924 to 1953, most interested in power and not ideology. By 1928, established himself as absolute dictator. He is also known as one of the greatest villains of the 20th century. He died in 1953 at age 74. By some estimate, he was responsible for the death of 20 million people during his rule time. Achievements of Joseph Stalin. One of the achievements made by Joseph Stalin was that he brought the Soviet Union to modernize and industrialize. They became an important industrial country in the world, second behind the United States. Another achievement.
Leba, we can't hear you very well, hon. A little louder, please, or closer to the microphone.
Another achievement is that he created a new kind of government, a dictator, totalitarian government. The government had all the power. Another major achievement Stalin is known for is winning the war against Germany. He got the Soviet Union to emerge as a world power. Joseph Stalin is a figure in the communist world. His appreciation for his achievements are offset by his harsh methods used during the time. Stalin's totalitarian elements. Stalin worked to establish total control of all aspects of his life in the Soviet Union. He controlled not only the government but also the economy and many aspects of citizens' personal lives. By mid-1930s, Stalin had forcefully transferred the Soviet Union into a totalitarian government and an industrial and political power. He stood unopposed as a dictator and maintained his authority over the Communist Party.
Maya, who should be talking here?
I think it's Liza.
Pardon?
It's Liza.
Leba, are you supposed to be speaking?
I'll do this part. Everyone had to praise him and his portrait was everywhere, schools to factories. Stalin brutally murdered people who he suspected to not be 100% loyal to him. This was called purges.
Stalin's totalitarian elements. Stalin worked to establish total control of all aspects of life in the Soviet Union. He controlled not only the government but also the economy and many aspects of citizens' personal lives. By the mid-1930s, Stalin had forcefully transformed the Soviet Union into a totalitarian government and an industrial and political power. He stood unopposed as director and maintained his authority of the Communist Party. Everyone had to praise him, and his portrait was everywhere from schools to factories. Stalin brutally murdered people whom he suspected not to be 100% loyal to him. These were called purges. 5-year plan. Starting in the late 1920s, Joseph Stalin launched a series of 5-year plans intended to transform the Soviet Union. In a modernized and industrial country, he wanted this done rapidly. To do so, he increased the production of coal, oil, steel, and electricity production. Workers who failed to achieve their target production was executed. He also introduced collectivization to increase food production, seizing land originally given to the peasants and reorganizing it into collective farms. Mass famine was caused as a result of, and millions died, but Stalin saw this as a necessary evil to achieve the ambitions of his 5-year plan to transform the Soviet Union. Flabbergasted.
My, that one's yours.
Stalin's death. As his health deteriorated in the early 1950s and after an attempted assassination, Stalin's paranoia increased, even to the doctors looking after him, which he had tortured into confessions of poisoning. He also ordered the head of the secret police, Lavin Beria, to investigate a new purge of the Communist Party. Before this could happen, Stalin died of a stroke on March 5th. After a power struggle over who would be the next leader of the Soviet Union from the inner circle, Nikita Khrushchev succeeded Stalin while he was a Stalinist. He would denounce a director and reform Stalin's policies of terror and fear during the Stalinization process. And this is potato. That's it.
Okay. Maya, did you present that video right from YouTube?
We added the video to the slide, so it wasn't like a link. Like we copy and pasted the video on it. I'm not sure how Library fully did it.
Okay. And so that's what the rest of you guys need to do. I'm going to try to play video right off YouTube, so you have to stop presenting, Maya.
Okay.
Okay, and then go back.
Is that
okay? So those of you who presented today, the next time you come into class, you need to bring me your works cited. I can't mark it off the screen; it's too small for me. Okay, so you need to bring your works cited into class. Now I'm going to present a video on Karl Marx. We'll see if it works. So I'm going to because I think you need to really understand Marx's theories in order to understand what the animals are doing. Okay, if you can't hear it, let me know, or if you can't see it.
Yet we're also often keen to dismiss the ideas of capitalism's most famous and ambitious critic, Karl Marx. This isn't very surprising. In practice, his political and economic ideas have been used to design disastrously planned economies and nasty dictatorships. Nevertheless, we shouldn't reject Marx too quickly. We ought to see him as a guide whose diagnosis of capitalism's ills helps us to navigate towards a more promising future. Capitalism is going to have to be reformed, and Marx's analyses are going to be part of any answer. Marx was born in 1818 in Trier in Germany. Soon he became involved with the Communist Party, a tiny group of intellectuals advocating for the overthrow of the class system and the abolition of private property. He worked as a journalist and had to flee Germany, eventually settling in London. Marx wrote an enormous number of books and articles, sometimes with his friend Friedrich Engels. Mostly, Marx wrote about capitalism, the type of economy that dominates the Western world. It was, in his day, still getting going, and Marx was one of its most intelligent and perceptive critics. These were some of the problems he identified with it. Modern work is alienated. One of Marx's greatest insights is that work can be one of the sources of our greatest joys. But in order to be fulfilled at work, Marx wrote that workers need to see themselves in the objects they have created. Think of the person who built this chair. It's straightforward, strong, honest, and elegant. It's an example of how, at its best, labour offers us a chance to externalise what's good inside us. But this is increasingly rare in the modern world. Part of the problem is that modern work is incredibly specialised. Specialised jobs make the modern economy highly efficient, but they also mean that it's seldom possible for any one worker to derive a sense of the genuine contribution they might be making to the real needs of humanity. Marx argued that modern work leads to alienation, Entfremdung. In other words, a feeling of disconnection between what you do all day and who you feel you really are and what you think you'd ideally be able to contribute to existence. Modern work is insecure. Capitalism makes the human being utterly expendable, just one factor among others in the forces of production, and one that can ruthlessly be let go the minute costs rise or savings can be made through technology. And yet, as Marx knew deep inside each of us, we don't want to be arbitrarily let go. We're terrified of being abandoned. Communism isn't just an economic theory. Understood emotionally, it expresses a deep-seated longing that we always have a place in the world's heart, that we will not be cast out. Workers get paid little, while capitalists get rich. This is perhaps the most obvious qualm that Marx had with capitalism. In particular, he believed that capitalists shrink the wages of the labourers as much as possible in order to skim off a wide profit margin. He called this primitive accumulation, ursprüngliche Akkumulation. Whereas capitalists see profit as a reward for ingenuity and technological talent, Marx was far more damning. Profit is simply theft, and what you're stealing is the talent and hard work of your workforce. However much one dresses up the fundamentals, Marx insists that at its crudest, capitalism means paying a worker one price for doing something and then selling it to somebody else at a much higher price. Profit is the fancy term for exploitation. Capitalism is very unstable. Marx proposed that capitalist systems are characterized by a series of crises. Every crisis is dressed up by capitalists as being somehow freakish and rare and soon to be the last one. Far from it, argued Marx. Crises are endemic to capitalism, and they're caused by something rather odd. The fact that we're able to produce too much, far more than anyone needs to consume. Capitalist crises are crises of abundance, rather than, as in the past, crises of shortage. Our factories and systems are so efficient, we could give everyone on this planet a car, a house, access to a decent school and a hospital. And that's what so enraged Marx, but also made him so hopeful too. Few of us actually need to work, because the modern economy is so productive. But rather than seeing this need not to work as the freedom it is, we complain about it masochistically and describe it by a pejorative word, unemployment. We should call it freedom. There's so much unemployment for a good and deeply admirable reason, because we're so good at making things efficiently. We're not all needed at the coalface. But in that case, we should, thought Marx, make leisure admirable. We should redistribute the wealth of the massive corporations that make so much surplus money and give it to everyone. This is, in its own way, as beautiful a dream as Jesus' promise of heaven, but a good deal more realistic sounding. Capitalism is bad for capitalists. Marx didn't think that capitalists were evil. For example, he was acutely aware of the sorrows and secret agonies that lay behind bourgeois marriage. Marx argued that marriage was actually an extension of business, and that the bourgeois family was fraught with tension, oppression, and resentment, with people staying together not for love, but for financial reasons. Marx believed that the capitalist system forces everyone to put economic interests at the heart of their lives, so that they can no longer know deep, honest relationships. He called this psychological tendency commodity fetishism, Warenfetischismus, because it makes us value things that have no objective value. He wanted people to be freed from financial constraint, so that they could, at last, start to make sensible, healthy choices in their relationships. The 20th century feminist answer to the oppression of women has been to argue that women should simply be able to go out to work. But Marx's answer was more subtle. This feminist insistence merely perpetuates human slavery. The point isn't that women should imitate the sufferings of their male colleagues. It's that men and women should have the permanent option to enjoy leisure. Why don't we all think a bit more like Marx? An important aspect of Marx's work is that he proposes that there's an insidious, subtle way in which the economic system colours the sort of ideas that we end up having. The economy generates what Marx termed an ideology. A capitalist society is one where most people, rich and poor, believe all sorts of things that are really just value judgments that relate back to the economic system. For example, that a person who doesn't work is worthless, that leisure beyond a few weeks a year is sinful, that more belongings will make us happier, and that worthwhile things and people will invariably make money. In short, one of the biggest evils of capitalism is not that there are corrupt people at the top. This is true in any human hierarchy. But that capitalist ideas teach all of us to be anxious, competitive, conformist, and politically complacent. Marx didn't only outline what was wrong with capitalism, we also get glimpses of what Marx wanted the ideal utopian future to be like. In his Communist Manifesto, he describes a world without private property or inherited wealth, with a steeply graduated income tax, centralized control of the banking, communication, and transport industries, and free public education. Marx also expected that communist society would allow people to develop lots of different sides of their natures. In communist society, it's possible for me to do one thing today and another tomorrow, to hunt in the morning, fish in the afternoon, rear cattle in the evening, criticize after dinner, just as I have a mind, without ever becoming hunter, fisherman, herdsman, or critic. After Marx moved to London, he was supported by his friend and intellectual partner Friedrich Engels, a wealthy man whose father owned a cotton plant in Manchester. Engels covered Marx's debts and made sure his works were published. Capitalism paid for communism. The two men even wrote each other adoring poetry. Marx was not a well-regarded or popular intellectual in his day. Respectable, conventional people of Marx's day would have laughed at the idea that his ideas would remake the world. Yet, just a few decades later, they did. His writings became the keystone for some of the most important ideological movements of the 20th century. But Marx was like a brilliant doctor in the early days of medicine. He could recognize the nature of the disease, although he had no idea how to go about curing it. At this point in history, we should all be Marxists, in the sense of agreeing with his diagnosis of our troubles. But we need to go out and find the cures that really will work. As Marx himself declared, and we deeply agree, philosophers until now have only interpreted the world in various ways. The point, however, is to change it.
Okay, so everyone could see and hear that video well? Yes? Okay, so you need to get your videos from YouTube, and you need to play them from YouTube, not from your PowerPoint or like that. So that video, I had a tab open on YouTube, and I played it right from YouTube, okay? And then there's no problems with the videos. Okay, so get your videos from YouTube. There's tons on there, and play it right from YouTube so that we can watch the videos. I find the videos very informative. Okay, so for example, in this one, we learned about Marx's hatred for capitalism. Particularly, he thought that the low wages that people were getting paid was like theft. Okay, He believed in taking wealth and redistributing it. So taking wealth from wealthy corporations and wealthy businesses and redistributing amongst the people so that everyone can have the same amount of money, so that everyone can be equal, so that there can be a classless society. This is not, so this idea we still see today. So for example, we all know that Justin Trudeau and the Liberals have been giving out all this money during the pandemic to people who have lost their jobs and all of that, right? You had the CERB, now the CERB has been streamlined and transitioned to some unemployment benefit, okay? And when Justin Trudeau was giving an interview, one of the reporters asked, how is the government paying for this? And Trudeau's response was, increase taxes on wealthy corporations. That's exactly what Karl Marx was saying, right? Take the money from wealthy corporations and distribute it amongst the population, right? It's kind of the same idea that Trudeau has. Tax the wealthy corporations and then distribute that money amongst the population that need it, okay? Karl Marx also placed a stress on leisure, okay? And of course, on there being no private property. So everything is owned by the government, and then the government distributes all of the wealth, okay? Now, in terms of Joseph Stalin, a few key points from the presentations today were the 5-year plans. So collectivization was one of those plans that was very important. And this is when Joseph Stalin decided to take farms away from farmers, okay, and bring them all together, collectivize them, and take them away from the farmers and have them owned by the government, okay? Now, farmers were so upset. I mean, obviously, right? These are farms that have been passed down for generation to generation. These are people who broke their backs working for their farms, working to own this land. And the government just came and took the land away from them and joined their farms with other farms so that it could all be owned by the government. So a lot of these people, what they did to rebel was they killed their livestock. So basically it was, well, if I can't have my farm, neither can you, okay? And then there was mass famine and starvation. And also many of these people who did that and who rebelled against the government for taking their farms, they were executed or sent to the gulags, which were labor camps, concentration camps, where they eventually were worked to death and starved to death. There was also the Great Purge, which is going to be in the book of the 1930s, which the groups touched on today. And this is when Joseph Stalin was killing people basically in his own party. Anyone that he deemed to be a political rival, he would have executed. He was also executing many military members from the Red Army, okay? And I forget how many he executed during the purge, but they would force confessions out of these people, and they were like public confessions, and they were basically forced, they would torture them, okay, torture them into confessing to crimes they had not committed, and then they would be killed publicly. And a lot of this came from the fact that Joseph Stalin was imbalanced, right? It came from his paranoia. And we saw that again with the doctor's purge, right? Where, thank God he died before he could really put that into effect. And again, that's another instance of his paranoia. And in the end, during his reign, he killed, they can never get the accurate number, obviously, but what they have record of 20 million people that he killed during his during his time as leader of Russia. 20 million people. Think of that. 20 million people. And that's only what they have on record. Imagine all the people that are not on record. So he was he was a dictator. He set up a totalitarian system of government where he ruled with an iron fist, and he used fear and murder to control the people. Okay, any questions on the content for the day? Joseph Stalin, Karl Marx, chapter 4. Okay, so you are going to read now chapter 5 and answer the study questions. Oh, and I was right last week. I was right last time I talked to you. It is period 1 tomorrow, cohort B. Okay? Now, some of you signed into my attendance this morning. Now, this morning I had period 2, A. Okay? Period 2A. So the people who should have been signing into my attendance in the morning should have been period 2B. So not you guys. Okay? And some of you were signing into my attendance in the morning. You should have been signing in to your period 2 teachers. Okay? So tomorrow I have period 1, that's you guys, cohort B. So that means that you guys, period 1, cohort A, should be signing into my attendance in the morning. Okay? So cohort A should be signing into my attendance in the morning because cohort B is in class. So I have to take attendance for the whole cohort, the cohort that's in class and the cohort that's at home. Okay? Don't ask me why. I just do. Any questions about that? Okay, guys, off you go to go read chapter 5 and answer the study questions. And don't forget, after you present, the next time that you come into class, you have to bring me your works cited. Okay, because I got to mark that on paper. Okay? All right, guys. Bye.
Bye, Miss.
Bye.
Bye, Miss.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Bye.
Miss, I had a question.
Sure, hon.
So we're gonna be in your class tomorrow in the morning, right?
Yes.
Which means that do we hand in our Othello pieces tomorrow or
No, your monologue is due on Thursday, hon.
on Thursday? So we just come in on Thursday to give it to you?
You have my class on Thursday, too.
Oh, okay. All right. Okay.
You have my class Wednesday and Thursday.
Okay, got it.
Yeah, okay?
Okay.
Okay. Who else has a question?
Miss, I have a question.
Yeah?
For the monologue, I picked like a point in the play where I thought Yago was gonna do something important, and then like I basically made him talk to himself and convince him not to do it. Like convince him not to, like, I don't know, I don't really get what to do in the monologue. Like I'm confused.
You have to pick an important part of the play and say what the character is thinking, but it has to be in keeping with the play.
Okay,
So what part of the play did you select? What was Yago doing?
Before he tells him about the handkerchief, like a point before that, like he convinces himself. I made it so that like he convinces himself not to tell him about the handkerchief.
Okay, then you can't do that because that's not what happened in the play. In the play, he does tell him about the handkerchief. So you'd have to write about him making up the plan to tell him about the handkerchief, to plant the handkerchief in Castiel's room. It's got to be accurate to the play.
No, like, I mean, I don't change the story or nothing. Like,
You're changing the story. If he's saying that he's not going to tell him about the handkerchief, then you're changing the story.
Okay. So so we're adding a scene basically, but it should make sense with the rest of the story.
It has to. right? It's right on your rubric that you have to have content from the play, that your character has to be in keeping with the character in the play.
Okay. So
Okay?
could I make it like he discusses with himself like if he should tell him about the handkerchief or not, and then he still goes ahead and does it?
Well, you can write about, yeah, you can do that. But you can write about how, what his plan is to convince Othello that Desdemona's cheating, what he's going to say, because then you can incorporate more content in that way.
Okay.
You have to
Okay.
think of something that would allow you to incorporate as much details and content from the play as you can.
So like, okay, I understand what you're saying. Like, tell him like basically how he plans to do, like how he plans to plant the handkerchief, or like
Sure.
a scene that didn't happen.
Sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you so much, Miss. See you
Okay, you're
tomorrow.
welcome. No problem. Okay, Jason?
Okay, Miss, I have a question.
Sure.
So, for tomorrow, period one, chord A, so we'll be filling in the attendance tomorrow? Is that right?
Yes, because B is in class. So just think about that every day I have to do attendance for both cohorts, the one that's in class and the one that's at home.
Okay.
Okay?
Okay, thank you, Miss.
You're welcome. Koa? Yeah? What was the question? Okay, I already said that whole thing in a lot of detail. Okay, but so you want to go through the entire Battle of the Cow Pit? Okay. What about Boxer? Did you write about Boxer? Okay. All right, okay. Yeah, that's fine, Koa. Okay, so when I'm reading out my answer, you just gotta check yours. Okay? Yeah, that was fine. No. So 2 times. So first is in the morning, okay, between 8:15 and 8:30. And then the second time is during academic support, which I believe is between 12 and 1. Okay, so the academic support teachers are on our Google Classroom. They're on our Google Classroom. So you can email them. They sent you messages on our Google Classroom. I believe it's Mr. Martinick and Miss Pavick. Okay, so you can just email them. And if you have any questions, you can even have a Google Meet with them. Okay, so just look at our Google Classroom on stream, and they left messages there for you guys. And you can always, during academic support times, you can send them a message. Okay? Okay. Is that everything, Koa? Okay. Okay, bye, Koa. You have my class tomorrow morning. What's your last name? What? Yeah. Yeah, you have my class tomorrow morning. And Thursday, yes.